Greetings, Frederick Riddle here with another Christian News and Views. This is episode 197, and today is Tuesday. Now, I have an article here. I'm going to try to read the whole thing because I think it's really good and it's very insightful. So let me get going. Sometimes you have to take the medicine, said President Donald Trump back in April, as markets plummeted and the world convulsed in response to his Liberation Day tariffs. He denounced his critics as panicans. 4 months on, and the panic has all but passed. After initial discomfort, the patient appears to be digesting Dr. Trump's unorthodox treatment and is responding well. The key to recovery, it seems, is to accept that the global economic order was wrong and that Donald is right. It's funny how often this seems to be the case. The stock markets quickly recovered from their slump and hit new highs this week after the European Union struck an initial trade agreement with the United States. The EU has accepted a 15% levy on its exports to the United States and promised to buy many more American goods. In return, America gave away almost nothing. This is Trumponomics 101. He wins, you pay. The extent of his denomination, or I'm not, the extent of his domination can be seen in the fact that Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the EU Commission, and Keir Starmer both came in turn to Turnberry in Scotland to perform the diplomatic formalities, while he took time out from playing golf on the course he owns. For his part, the gracious host flattered his guests by calling them tough negotiators, even as they essentially accepted all his terms. This is the art of the post deal. He flatters, you keep paying. The British Prime Minister grimaced as Donald Trump lectured him on the benefits of low taxation and strong borders, as well as the evils of Sadak Khan and wind turbines. But Starmer knows deep down that the only aspect of his premiership which has gone well, has been his negotiating of the political weather system that is Donald Trump. Britons bowed to Trump's agenda first and was duly rewarded with a 10% levy on all our goods, the lowest on offer. It's strange to think that only last year, as Trump campaigned for re-election, the expert classes on both sides of the Atlantic frantically debated whether Trump was serious about imposing a 10% levy on all imports, certain as they were that such a move would tank the financial system. In fact, Trump went much further than anyone expected and slapped additional reciprocal tariffs on countries such as some as high as 50%. But his initial aggression was so bewildering that now the world is falling on his lesser, though still significant cares as a blessed relief. Now catch this. This is classic New York real estate stuff. Frighten the wits out of opposing parties with a ruinous initial threat, then watch them cave in gratitude when you agree. Watch them cave in gratitude when you agree to be slightly less exacting. It's complicated, but not that complicated when you get right down to it, Trump told von der Leyen on Sunday. The simple truth, which he understood, but the rest of the world couldn't quite admit, is that every country desperately wants access to the U.S. market, which is why he, as America's commander-in-chief, must have the upper hand on global trade. The leverage is his, inevitably. It's too soon to say the trade war is over, of course. The deals with Britain, Europe, Japan are only frameworks that could fall apart as officials work through the details. And then there's China, still the factory of the world, and the hardest piece of the Trump trade puzzle to solve. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has spent the last 2 days in Sweden conducting intensely difficult negotiations with Chinese officials about extending a pause on America's onerous tariffs against the world's second greatest power. But what's clear is that America is now in a far more commanding position on trade, even with the world's second biggest superpower. And that's down to Donald Trump's belligerence. He can pause and pause again, but he doesn't fold. Trump understands that beyond economics, protectionism is a very useful cudgel in diplomacy because tariffs are like sanctions. America can make warring nations fall in line by threatening to impose steep export taxes if they don't comply. Last week, Trump used the threat of U.S. tariffs to help broker a peace deal between Thailand and Cambodia last week. He did the same with with DR Congo and Rwanda earlier this month, and India and Pakistan in May. He wants to be remembered as a peacemaker, and it's obvious now that Liberation Day is part of his anti-war strategy. This week, Trump pleased Starmer and the EU by promising tariffs of up to 100% on Vladimir Putin's Russia if the conflict in Ukraine doesn't end in less than 2 weeks. That's because he knows that punishment tariffs on unpopular countries are a useful way of keeping allies content. Back in America, Trump's political opponents point out that while Wall Street seems to be enjoying a bounce, the Main Street economy is suffering. Basic economics suggests that tariffs have to be taxed on consumers, as consumers, or companies rather, inevitably pass extra costs on to customers. And Americans have been telling pollsters that, as well as inflation, concern about the impact of Trump's tariffs has made them rein in spending. Yet consumer and business sentiment in the U.S. is actually ticking up, not down. And the latest survey suggests that almost 50% of Americans rate the strength of the U.S. economy as good, up from about 35% at the start of the Trump presidency. Free traders might still grumble about tariffs taking the world backwards, but others are starting to acknowledge that Trump could be late capitalism's last best hope. Trumponomics may force consumers to pay more, but he is taxing Americans less. His administration has extended his significant tax cuts from his first term and added tax relief for pensioners, as well as on people working overtime or for tips. At the same time, the White House can point out that inflation is going down, and its External Revenue Service is bringing in $20 billion each month in tariffs, which helps reduce America's vast and fiscally unsustainable deficit. This is not quite the golden age that Trump voters promised when he came into office earlier this year, but the president isn't exaggerating when he tells reporters that America is the hottest country anywhere in the world. The danger is that while Trump milks us all on trade, other countries will suffer and become more resentful towards America. We're already seeing the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, coming closer together as many regard the United States as an avaricious hegemon. But that process was underway long before Trump first became president. The truth is that Trump has defied the increasingly unpopular economic orthodoxy that has ruled the world since at least 1995, when President Bill Clinton's America helped found the World Trade Organization, and he's winning. Here's my opinion. That is a very insightful analysis. It all comes down to understanding that President Donald Trump is applying lessons learned in real estate and applying them to the United States trade policy. It has been a painful adjustment for Americans and the world, but it is working. Donald Trump is winning, and so are we. Now, I want to remind you, I've kind of pointed in this direction myself in the past. I didn't have all the data that they have there, but I was seeing that happen. And another thing is, I want to point out that in that article, some people, his opponents are saying that polls are saying one thing, and yet the truth is, we're finding is different. It's because it depends upon what polls you use. There's always saying, follow the money trail. And while both liberals and conservatives give money to almost all the poll taking organizations, where does most of the money come from? And most of these polls, especially the ones that are being used by the liberals, are being paid for by the liberals. So you get what they pay for. Well, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this. It really kind of, in my opinion, kind of clarifies where things are. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, I hope that you will do so. If I have three goals: to inform you, encourage you, and inspire you. If I've done any, I approach everything I do here, every episode, with those goals in mind. You are the judge whether I do that or not. And if you think I have, and you haven't subscribed yet, then why not subscribe? You have a great day, and I will see you in an, oh, wait a minute, one more thing. This is brought to you by a Basic Authors Training and Basic Authors Training group for groups, and is also brought to you by Ministry Publishing. That's the only advertising you ever see here. Well, you have a great day, and I will see you in the next episode.